Today, as I said initially, we'll be talking about beyond sprints and stand-ups, how agile culture impacts success with Graham. And I now hand over to Graham. Over to you, Graham.
Hopefully you can all see that now, yeah?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. Thanks for that intro. I am going to be using Slido, so if you want to get your devices ready, scan the QR code, go to that URL, look up that number. There's a few slides in before we actually get to the questions, so that Slido number will be on the next few slides as well while we get started. But quick heads up that we're going to do a couple of little interactions on there. So a little bit about me. I know you heard a bit of an intro. I'm the owner of Product Results, which is kind of the hat I'm wearing today. Product Results is a consultancy business where I help people produce improve their teams and get better product results. I'm also co-founder of Intel, which is a bit of a startup that helps fire services manage risks. That's quite new. And I guess my day job hat is as head of software engineering at Racing Digital. I've been there for a couple of months, and we're looking to build a completely new team and really try and innovate and modernize the British horse racing sport. That's all a bit dull. So let's have some pictures. So myself, my lovely wife, been together nearly 30 years now. Like all good software developer background people, used to have that long hair and ponytail. Always enjoyed my food, as me as a young child enjoying a big bowl. Got two wonderful children who love Christmas, as you can see. And you're lucky to have me here tonight because Tuesday is normally my football night. So still enjoy getting out and playing five-a-side. So I want to start with a bit of a quote. You've probably heard Peter Drucker before. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Quite a famous quote. That really got me thinking about, well, why? What is it about culture that eats strategy for breakfast? So, yeah, my thoughts on that is really because strategy changes. You don't stick with one strategy and work with it forever. It needs to change. So what enables that change? Well, it's the culture that enables the change, and that's what gives you agility. That's why we try and be agile in what we're doing, because we want to be able to follow the strategy and change as needed. So what's culture? I really like this fairly simple definition of culture, and that's it's a combination of what we talk about. That's what creates our culture, and it's what we reward. So fairly simple things that help us define what our culture is. And we'll look at some more detailed sort of classifications in a little bit. So what I'd like to do is kind of explore what's our collective culture. I think we're all from different companies, different backgrounds, different roles, but we are all here tonight. Let's see if there's any sort of common culture that binds us all together. So the first question we're going to ask about is, what do you talk about? And really, when you think about what do you talk about, what are the topics that come up in your day to day? What are those topics that you're going to talk about? What stories do you tell? That's an interesting place to look and think about culture. So over to you. We'll get the Slido going. What do you talk about? People managing to connect. It looks like we've got 3 people on there at the moment. We've got a few answers coming in now. So let's have a look, see if there's anything common in what we talk about. Yeah, continuous improvement, high performing teams, project management, work projects a few times, delivery dates, high performing teams a couple of times, frustration, risks, the work, the weekends. Interesting. Better agile. Nice. Yeah, some good stuff in there. Slowness in decision making. So what are the challenges? Trust deficit. That's an interesting one. Let's come out. Yeah, thank you. So the next question is really, what do you reward? So when we're thinking about what do you reward, we might want to think about what is it that gets people promoted. Also, what earns people praise? What gets called out as being good, above and beyond? And again, what stories are told? Who's the hero? And perhaps why are they the heroes? So we'll do the same again. A quick Slido to see about what is it you reward. See if there's something again common in our collective cultures.
Hi everyone.
Right. Right, we've had a few come in. Let's have a look. What do you reward? Leadership behavior, outcomes. Outcomes comes up a little bit. Risk taking and experiments. That's interesting. That's often a little bit harder to get to from a cultural point of view. The hours worked, multitaskers, blind loyalty. There's a few challenging things that get rewarded here. Being a hero and heroics, getting through something hard. Behavior was a good one. Delivering on time. Yeah, nice. Thank you. Okay, so that's a simple way of looking at culture. Let's go a bit deeper and see a bit more academic views of culture. And the first one I want to look at is Westrum's organizational model, which, no surprise, was developed by Dr. Ron Westrum in 2004. And he really talks about three typologies of organizational culture. So he's classified cultures into sort of three main bands, really focusing on how information flows between people and teams. That's how he defines culture or sees the culture. You may have come across it from the State of DevOps surveys. Those were the surveys that brought us the DORA metrics, which you've perhaps heard of as well. So here it is. Let's say there's the three types of culture. The first one being pathological or power oriented. And really it's classified by sort of low cooperation. If messengers try and bring bad news, they're the ones who get shot. People don't want to hear bad news. Responsibilities are kind of shirked. Bridging between people and teams is discouraged. Failure leads to scapegoating, and any kind of novelty gets crushed before it has a chance to get anywhere. So, not a great culture to be in there. The one in the middle then is a bureaucratic culture, and that's very rule oriented. So there's modest cooperation going on there. Messengers, people who are trying to share information, are largely neglected. It doesn't follow the rule book. Responsibilities are quite narrow, so not a lot of opportunity to innovate. Bridging between people and teams is tolerated. It's okay to a certain extent. Failure leads to justice, so the right people get punished. And novelty leads to problems. So if people aren't following the rules and they're trying to do something novel, that causes problems. So it's sort of more functional. It's probably not that kind of innovative organization. So the last one is a generative or performance oriented, and that's categorized by high cooperation. Messengers are trained in how to share information effectively. The risks are shared between people and teams. Bridging and collaboration is encouraged. Any failure leads to inquiry, so it can be corrected. And novelty, if it proves to be better than what is already happening, is implemented. So you can see that's quite a performance oriented. It's a culture that you would probably want to try and aspire towards. Next one I want to look at is tribal leadership, which you can see is a book. It's published in 2008, and it's based on a 10-year study of 24,000 people in more than 24 organisations. So it's quite a long time of study before they got to publish these findings. And really the core theme is that the success of a company depends on its tribes. You can see the name tribes comes out as a more appropriate title for a book, and tribal leadership, the subtitle leveraging natural occurring groups, isn't quite so catchy. So they call them tribes. And the strength of those tribes is determined by the tribal culture. So let's have a look at how tribal leadership breaks down. So there's 5 stages of tribal culture, and we'll start looking at the bottom. Each stage is kind of categorized by a phrase that kind of helps you remember it. So the phrase at stage 1 is life sucks, or all life sucks. So stage 1, life sucks. People are sort of feel alienated. They're going to undermine. People are despairingly hostile. It's a kind of violent and unfair world. Like, fortunately, only 2% of the organisations they looked at sort of fit into that category. You're probably thinking more like street gangs, that kind of rough justice kind of thing. You know, life isn't that important. All life sucks. When you move up to stage 2, people are kind of separated at this stage, and the phrase here is "my life sucks." So it's not everything is bad, but woe is me, my life sucks. You're feeling the victim at this stage. So people are sort of passively antagonistic. They've seen it all before. They've seen it fail. You know, we tried doing Scrum, it didn't work. You can be a bit sarcastic, resigned. They sort of judge, but not be prepared to sort of do anything about it. It's much easier to sit on the sidelines and throw stones. Fortunately, 25% of the organisations they looked at fit in this stage 2 level. So move up to stage 3. This is the vast majority now of organisations sit in this 49%. This is the lone warrior, and the phrase here is "I'm great." And there's a kind of unspoken "and you're not." So if you spend all your time saying "I'm great" and talking about that kind of knowledge is power. People are hoarding that power so that they can look good. It does actually create a symbiotic relationship with stage 2. If there's lots of "I'm great," it creates other people going, "Well, my life sucks. I'm not as great as that person." So they sort of fit together. It's all about personal domination. How can I win and be the best and prove to everybody that I'm the best? So lots of I language, "I'm great." When we move up to stage 4, it's now where we're great. So a lot more of the tribal pride, where 22% of organisations up at this stage 4. There's often a sort of another tribe that you're competing against. So we're great. Again, there's probably that unspoken and they're not. But it creates stable partnerships. It's categorized by people no longer being that hoarder of knowledge. It's shared a lot more. There's probably more connections between people in a team, rather than one person being the center of it all. And the last stage, stage 5, is life is great. So here you're no longer trying to beat a competitor. You're trying to create that global impact. you're in competition with what's possible, not another tribe. Again, very few organizations get to this level, and in fact, their research suggested that kind of the best an organization can be is stable at stage 4 with moments in stage 5. And when that big challenge comes along, they can step into stage 5 and then drop back to 4 when it's a bit more mundane. Yeah, clues should we look for stage 4 or higher? I think stage 4 it's about the language. Two things they look for is language, a lot more of we rather than I, and the relationships are formed rather than that sort of hub and spoke model where someone sits in the middle holding the knowledge. There's triads connected, so multiple people are connected. If someone comes to you and asks for the information, you might share it with a third party or connect the right people together to have those conversations, so knowledge isn't hoarded. So that's really the stage 4 level. It's a lot of the we language rather than I.
Graham, quick one, Imran here. Brilliant model, really resonates with what we are seeing. Is it possible for teams or organizations to move backwards as well? For example, some organization or some teams are at stage 5. Is it possible to come back to stage 1, say, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I think the stages are fairly stable. I think it takes quite a bit to move between those stages, but it's certainly possible to move down. And the same people can act in different stages in different situations. One of the classics is around sort of academic environments. We spend all of our academic lives trying to be in that stage 3. Really, it's about I'm great. What knowledge do I have? What citations have I got? So can be quite difficult. But if you can get in that collaborative environment, maybe as a department or a group of people working on a research project, you can move up to that stage 4, and we're great. So different people, different situations can be in those different stages.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Which stage
There
would
is a
harmony?
yeah.
I'm not sure what artificial harmony would be. Are you able to elaborate on artificial harmony? Is that where it's not
Yeah, I
genuine,
mean,
or is that?
sure. Yeah, I mean, it is one of the dysfunctions like of the teams. Like I think this was a very famous, I think, book written,
Okay.
5 dysfunctions, right? Like so, I'm just if I can actually like the team is a microcosm of the organization, right? Like so, if at an organization level there is an artificial harmony, what would it look like in these stages?
Yeah, I think you're probably going to be in stage 3. There's a kind of you think the mood is one of wanting to help and support, but actually it's just about proving how great people are as individuals. So it's about sort of getting one up on the other person or people in the group. That sort of feels like the artificial harmony. Everyone says that they're committed, engaged, and want to work together, but really it's about personal point scoring.
There are a couple of more questions. If you're okay,
I'm okay. Yeah.
JP has asked, which clues should we look to find stage 4 or higher teams, companies?
Yeah, I think again it's a lot about the language. So people stop talking about I did this and I'm going to do that, and it's a lot more about we did this and we're going to do that, and connecting people together. So it's less about I've got all the knowledge, come to me, everything goes through me, and a lot more about I'll connect you to the right person on the team and we'll share the information. So it's language and connections are the 2 bits. I think if you're interested in tribal leadership, I'd recommend the book. It's a really good read.
Thanks. And Emily, you want to unmute yourself, or should I read out for you?
Yeah, I can unmute. I was just interested to understand if, so within stage 3, there's 49% of organizations. Did the research or does the book go into within that 49%, you're likely to have some at stage 1, some at stage 5, is there that variety, or actually if most of you are at stage 3, it's fairly likely that within the organization it's the same across the business?
Yeah, I think they averaged it out. I don't remember the details, but I think they averaged it out. There's some interesting diagrams around those connections. So they actually mapped out who talks to who within an organization, I think over a period of time, and they looked at those people who were sort of a hub and spoke, sat in the middle, and where there's additional connections. And I think they used that to kind of categorize it. Okay.
There's one last one. Richard? Well, you're generating quite an interest, Graham.
Yeah.
Good. Richard, you want to speak, or should I?
Yeah, I've been in teams where the management has tried to convey the impression that within stage 4 or 5, the people on the ground have been thought it's much lower down the scale than that. How often does that happen, where different people in teams have got different ideas about where the team is, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, I think it's quite common. I don't know if it's still on there. I think it's the Culture Sync website that has a lot of this. There used to be a self-assessment tool, and you would answer a number of questions as a group. And I think the results of that would say knock yourself down a level or even 2, because people are going to overestimate where they're at. So I think that's quite common. What can you do about it? It's probably an observation thing again. What language are people using, and what are the connections that people are forming? So is there a bottleneck on the team? Does everything need to go through a single authority, the person who holds the knowledge and isn't sharing it? And what language do people use? So are we talking about, again, I'm great rather than we're great? It's probably that kind of consistent 2 bits in the model. In some ways, I don't know whether it matters too much whether the leaders agree with where the culture is at. I think part of this is, I'll give away the very end, but I think you own this yourself. What connections can you do? How can you change your language to improve the culture for yourself, those people around you, and your team, and kind of spread it from the bottom.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Should have done a whole talk on tribal leadership. So the next one I'm going to look at is energy leadership. So this was a 2007 book, recently updated in 2022. And it was developed under the IPEC coach training program by Bruce Snyder. It's an Amazon #1 bestseller. It's a really good audible listen. That's how I came across it. So if you like a bit more of the story-based learning, he actually describes going in and coaching a CEO through the challenges and the discovery of different levels of energy leadership. So it's a really good listen. So we'll try and explain energy leadership. So I think the first thing to call out is this idea that our thoughts are what connects and forms our emotions, and that's what forms our actions. So there's sort of 3 things that are interconnected at the high level. Our thoughts drive our emotions that drive our actions. The next thing is categorizing the different levels. So levels 1 and 2, and perhaps part of level 3 is catabolic energy, which is described as very heavy. It's quite destructive energy. 3 up to 7 is anabolic, which is a lot lighter and leads to growth. It's a self-perception chart, so it's really about self-awareness and your perception of the world. How are you thinking about it? What emotions show up, and therefore what actions do you take? No level's really better than others. It's not trying to get everyone up to level 7. Different levels have different outcomes, different strengths, and you can move through these levels quite quickly because it's based on your thoughts and your emotions. So you can change your thoughts, you can change your levels. I think also worth recognizing that some thoughts are easier to adjust than others. If the thoughts are based on very strong held beliefs, they're going to be harder to change. So let's have a look at level 1. The thought here is one of being the victim. And if you feel like you're the victim, you've got little, your emotion is apathy. So there's little sort of appetite to do anything. What's the point? You're going to have a very sort of lethargic reaction here down at level 1. You move up to level 2. You're now full of anger, so there's a conflict. You're wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm anger. There's defiance. There's it can be quite a motivating energy for action. Anger is quite a strong emotion, but it is a heavy energy. It can be a slightly destructive energy. So the first of the anabolic levels is really around taking responsibility. I think where level 2 is you're wrong and I'm going to show you, level 3 is you're wrong and I forgive you. So I'm going to work with you or work around you. That's what that cooperation piece is. So you don't know any better. I'm going to forgive you. I'm going to have some responsibility for my actions. I'm not completely driven by anger. When we move up to level 4, it's a lot more if I win, you win. So there's a lot more concern for others. There's a lot of compassion. You're trying to work in service of helping somebody else win. Because if you win, then I win. At level 5, this is about everybody wins. So there's a kind of a peace with the situation, an acceptance of what's going on. Things are as they are. Yeah, we're looking at everybody wins. Level 6, there's this kind of idea of synergy or synthesis, and that's the idea that we're all connected, we're all one, and so there's loads of possibilities, which brings joy. And because you can see all those different possibilities, you can act with wisdom. You can appear very wise because you've got all those different possibilities. And when we move up to level 7, this is often more thought of as that kind of flow state. So there's no judgment because you're not really thinking about rights and wrongs. You're just got this absolute passion for creation. You're in the moment. Whatever you're doing, it's flowing through you, and that's what the level 7's all about. Right. That was energy leadership. I think there's a few synergies there with the tribal leadership when you think about those different levels. Project Aristotle. When I was checking the links for this, the rework with Google is no longer available. So I've got the web archive link. I think last time I checked, it was available in Japanese. I think only the Google in Japan kept it up to date. But the Google Project Aristotle, I will perhaps come back to that question around level 7 energy, if that's all right. So Google study 2012, really trying to answer the question, what makes a team effective at Google? So they looked at 180 teams across the globe. 115 were project teams in engineering, and they had 65 what they call pods in a sales sort of team. They obviously had a mix of high and low performing teams, and what they were testing for was kind of the team composition, so personality traits, the sales skills, the demographics. So what level were people at within their role? How long had they been at Google, and where were they based? They also looked at sort of team dynamics, so what it was like to work with their different teammates, and how did they see each other. And really, this is the results they came up with. So they found that the number one factor that determined a high-performing team was psychological safety. So we'll have a look at psychological safety in a bit more detail, but we'll also look at the other 4 on there, because I think they're often neglected when it comes to high-performing teams. So psychological safety, why is it important? Well, individuals on teams with higher psychological safety were less likely to leave. They were more likely to harness the power of diverse ideas from teammates, so have better ideas. They actually brought in more revenue, and they were rated as twice as effective by the executives when they were evaluating the team. So lots of really good stuff for psychological safety. So one of the things that you might think about, that if your team's lacking psychological safety, it's really seen as a fear of asking for or giving constructive feedback. Maybe people are hesitant around expressing divergent ideas or asking what might be perceived as a stupid question. So you could ask yourself, do you see everyone feeling comfortable sharing ideas in front of each other? Are you spotting people who dominate that conversation? Maybe that I'm great sort of personality and behavior. Or can everyone share? And how do you deal with failure? Can you deal with it openly, or will people feel shunned if they're not? Which I think risks as an experiments came out as some of the what do we talk about in the early Slido questions. So 4 stages psychological safety. It's really based on feeling. The first stage being feeling included, because we need to be accepted before we need to be heard. So is it have we got the respect and the permission to be included? And that's that stage 1, inclusion safety. When we look at learner safety, is it safe to learn and grow? Are we able to ask questions, give and receive feedback? Are we able to experiment and make mistakes? And then stage 3, is it safe to contribute? So can you participate as a member of the team? Can you use your talents and abilities to make a difference? Do you feel that you're actually contributing? And then the final stage is around challenger safety. So is it safe to challenge the status quo? Can you suggest improvements? Will that be accepted? If we go right back to Westrom's model, that bureaucratic, rule-based in the middle, novelty was crushed. It was only when you moved up to the generative that novelty was implemented. So how do you build the first level, inclusion safety? Well, just make new members feel welcome. So connect with them, learn about their backgrounds, kind of help them integrate, be a friendly face for them. You can practice your active listening. So show genuine interest in what others are saying. Make sure everyone on the team has a voice. If you notice people perhaps who want to speak, can you bring them in into a conversation? And celebrate the diversity in the team. If you recognise and appreciate the different perspectives and backgrounds of each team member, that will help people feel included rather than feeling different. Next stage up is around learner safety. So this is about encouraging curiosity and making it safe to ask those stupid questions and seek clarification. So if someone asks a question that does seem obvious to everybody else, you can still thank them for the question, you can explain it rather than laugh at them and ridicule them. Providing constructive feedback helps people learn and feel safe to learn, particularly if you're framing that feedback as a way to help people grow rather than as criticism. And we'll look at feedback in a moment. Normalizing failure. So if you can frame things as an experiment, then it's kind of expected that they may sometimes fail. When things don't go to plan, it's a chance to learn. It's not something to be punished. Next level up is around contributor safety. So this is about delegating the tasks effectively so people can contribute. If we've got meaningful work that aligns with their strengths, then people will feel that they're contributing. And when people are contributing, you recognise that. So acknowledge and appreciate people's efforts and achievements. And then people want autonomy in what they're doing as well. So giving people control over how they work will again help them feel that they're contributing more. So that was psychological safety. Let's have a look at dependability. So signs of needing to improve your dependability. If the team's got poor visibility into project's priorities or the progress that's being made, you've maybe got diffusion of responsibility, no clear owners for tasks or problems. And the questions to ask yourself in here are, when team members say they'll get something done, do they? Have a think about that and why they might not. Are people proactively communicating with each other about delays and taking responsibility for addressing them? If you can't depend on your teammates, this is an area to look at. So things you can do to help with dependability. Maybe no one's taking responsibility because people don't know what their roles and responsibilities are. So any thoughts on tools we could use to help clarify roles and responsibilities? I don't want to shout any out or drop something in the chat. I've got one we're going to look at in a minute. We're going to look at a RACI matrix, which I know not everyone enjoys, but we'll have a quick look. If we've got some concrete plans, we can provide transparency into what people are working on. Again, how might we do that? Use Canvas using personas for roles. Yeah, nice. I think that might be another approach we could use rather than a RACI matrix. But let's have a look at a RACI matrix anyway. So if you're not familiar, it's a kind of 2x2 grid that helps articulate who is responsible and is therefore going to do the work, who's accountable and cares about the success of the work, who's consulted, so whose feedback is sought and acted upon, and then who's informed, because information is going to be shared with them, but you're not looking for feedback, you're not going to act upon their feedback in most cases. So you've got those 4 letters, RACI, and you're going to draw up a grid a bit like this, with either roles or people along the top, and then responsibilities and things that you want to do down the side. And then you just fill it in. You decide who's accountable, who's responsible, who's consulted, who's informed. Some tips for using a RACI. Only one person's accountable. Minimize the number of people responsible and consulted. You can have multiple people, but the more you have, the more complicated it's going to be, particularly if you've got to consult a lot of people. Maybe they could be informed, but equally, not everyone needs to be informed. It's okay not to put a letter against each person. Sometimes I've found the same person is accountable and responsible, particularly on smaller teams. And I think my number one tip is the values in the conversation, not the grid. I tend not to keep the grid around as a reference. I don't print it out and put it on the wall and say we must follow this. But it's a really interesting conversation, particularly if multiple people try and do this themselves, and then you compare notes. So I think the conversation really helps people understand their roles and responsibilities. Let's have a look at structure and clarity. So what are the signs of needing to improve structure and clarity? So again, lack of clarity about who's responsible for what. Got unclear decision-making process, owners or rationale. And the questions to ask yourself about, do we need to improve in this area? Whether team members know what the team and project goals and how we're going to get there. Do people feel they've got the autonomy, the ownership, and they're working on discrete projects? So you don't want lots of overlapping work, that makes it difficult. So what can you do about it? Well, you can regularly communicate team goals, ensure the team members understand the plan for achieving them. Again, any thoughts how we might do that sort of communication piece? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. Sorry, it's
Cool.
Andy. So I work in as a Scrum Master. So we communicate team goals as part of our planning session for the next 2 weeks.
Yep.
We ensure team members understand them, through the refinement sessions that we have beforehand, where we talk about what's coming up, through the planning meeting, and then very occasionally, not often enough, we have a longer term view at what's coming up, which is shared, and more than shared, it's discussed.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I do something similar. I try and start the sprint planning with a where are we at in the big picture before we drill down into the details. I think that really helps. I like the fact that you put a discussion in there. I think I've tended to see it more of a presentation. It's a quick here we are and we're moving on. There isn't always that opportunity for feedback, but I like that additional ownership I think that it brings to the team.
Yes.
Cool, thank you. Something else you can do, ensure your team meetings have a clear agenda and designated leader. Perhaps not so much in the Scrum ceremonies, but you may still want to do that. So you want to think about what are the team meetings you have. Do they have an agenda? Do they have a leader? And something I came across recently was think about 3 Ps. What's the purpose of the meeting? What's the plan for the meeting? What's the payoff for the people who are there? It's a nice way of remembering the 3 key things before you bring people together in a meeting. Can you think about those? Let's have a look at meaning now. So what are the signs needing to improve meaning? So if work is based solely on ability, expertise, or workload, you're not considering individual development needs and interests, then the work is going to lack meaning for those individuals. If you're not recognizing achievements and milestones, again, you're going to struggle a bit with the meaning. So things you can ask yourself, are people getting a sense of personal and professional fulfillment? And then is the work match the team members based on both their skills and ability and their interests? So people getting to work on the things that they would like to work on. So what can we do to help improve? We can give positive feedback on things that people are doing and offering to help things they're struggling with. And I'm going to suggest we could use radical candor and feedback models for this, and we'll look at those both in a moment. You can publicly express your gratitude for someone who helped you out. Again, radical candor and feedback could help you feel more comfortable in doing this. So let's have a look at radical candor. So radical candor is another 2x2 grid. And as you can see, radical candor is when you can demonstrate that you care personally and you're still challenging directly. I think if you forget about the caring personally and you're just challenging people directly, you can be seen in that obnoxious aggression stage. I think for myself, my own journey, I worked with a few people I would say was in that category, and I didn't want to be that person. So unfortunately, I fell into the ruinous empathy. I could demonstrate very easily that I cared personally, but challenging directly was a struggle. So I wasn't very direct. I wasn't very clear in my expectations and what I wanted people to do. If you fail on both of those, you drop down into that manipulative insincerity. So we'll dive into a bit more detail. So when we think about radical candor and that quadrant, can you remember a time when you were screwing up, someone told you, and it helped you in the long run? Can you think about who that person was? How did it feel in the moment when you received that feedback? Were you defensive, upset? Did you feel judged? But what was this person's direct challenge to you, and how did they demonstrate that they cared about you personally? Would anyone like to share a story? It's fairly personal, but it'd be interesting if people felt safe enough to do that.
I'll share one and then I'll shut up and let other people. But I had one. I can remember it like it was yesterday.
Nice.
So it's very, very many years ago. I just split up with my first girlfriend, who was a fellow office worker, and she phoned me up at work. And when I put the phone down, having talked to her, I was just about to slag her off in front of the whole office, which would have been a very big mistake, when my friend said to me, "Andy, stop." And I'm very grateful he did, because I'd have just made myself look really foolish and stupid and bitter and all the other kind of things. So I can remember my friend, also called Andy, and I can remember what he said, and I can remember the impact. And I suppose for a moment I might feel a bit defensive, but that was a very fleeting feeling, because I quickly recognised that he was very right, and that you should never slag off a colleague, you should never slag off an ex-girlfriend, especially not in the office.
Yeah.
And I was on the verge of making a very big mistake, which he stopped me from making. And it's that I remember that, and I was like more than 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the kind of story that helped me move closer to that radical candor and challenging directly. It feels quite that you're going to upset someone and you really don't want to, but actually the impact when people are brave enough to step in and to challenge you directly, but in a caring way, that feedback is kindness, and people remember it. They say, "That was a great impact. It really helped me." So you're almost it's helpful. It's a gift to challenge people in this way. Thanks, Andy. There we go. Yes, you do feel grateful for this. Let's look at the other quadrant then. Obnoxious aggression. Was a time when you offered criticism just trying to be helpful, but the other person experienced it as obnoxiously aggressive. So maybe you thought you were caring personally, but they didn't perceive it that way. Or maybe there was a time when you're offering someone criticism, but you're actually doing it from an angry place, and perhaps your intentions weren't so pure. So again, anyone got any memories of this? I'm happy to share one of mine if nobody has.
I can. One of my line manager, yeah, he was kind of a bit. He tries to wrap it up that it's that he's not a bit obnoxious about it. Few of the fillers he also used to it, but if I see in the first hindsight, it was very much obnoxious aggression behavior that we're having. Again, it led you, rather than taking that feedback constructively, it gets you into more negative thoughts. Self-worth kind of a question itself hardly helped me. Again, those pointers he raised, it took me a while actually to understand what exactly he was meant for. Those pointers was right, but I think I worked out quite a lot to get those pointer out, rather than what should have been a much more easier constructive feedback. So yeah, not very helpful for sure.
Yeah, I think if you're not demonstrating that caring personally, people put the walls up and they stop listening to what's being said. So particularly if you're offering the feedback in a kind way, in a way that's trying to help the person or help the team deliver, you need that message to be heard. So you've seen this behaviour all the time as leaders on town hall meetings in the Q&A section. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, sorry, just to add a bit more, I felt even myself being given that kind of or shown that kind of a behavior while giving a feedback for a team member who was continuously not listening. So yeah, you end up getting into that trap when you felt that you are not being heard as well.
Yeah. So the guidance there would be, how can you frame it so that you're increasing your caring personally level. So if you can demonstrate that you're doing this with the intentions of helping the person rather than trying to score points, trying to belittle them, trying to just offload your anger, far more likely to hear it. Yeah. I think one of the interesting observations that Kim Scott makes in a book is that you can be quite effective as a manager, as a leader, through this obnoxious aggression. It does get results. People don't like it, but it does get results because you are saying what's needed, and people will be motivated to do that even if they resent it.
Yeah, another thought that if you are that kind of a personality, that means whoever you've been talking to it, they might interact with each other, they form a closer bonding. So that could be another thing as well.
Yeah, indeed. Let's have a look at the third quadrant, ruinous empathy. So when did you fail to give someone feedback just to be nice, only to see the person suffer a result of failing to correct that bad behavior? When were you trying to be nice only to realize you've been inadvertently cruel? The classic example is you spot someone with something in their teeth and you don't say anything, and then it makes a bigger embarrassment for that person. Yeah. Anyone got a story that resonates with this ruinous empathy? You thought the kindest thing to do was not to say anything, but actually turns out that wasn't the kind thing to do.
Yeah, that's that example, spinach in the teeth. One of my colleague used to have a very bad sweat smell throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
It took us quite a while to give him a cologne to make him realize, but he still didn't get it. So I think someone kind of told him rather than someone initially on the first or second go telling him that there's a problem, he need to deal with it.
Yeah. Good, thank you. And then the last one in here, manipulative insincerity. So I think this is probably a crossover with that last example. When did you fail to tell a person directly a problem, but instead you talk to others about it? Maybe you told people their work was good, but you're undermining it behind their back. You were insincere in what you were saying. It's really hard to see yourself as that kind of backstabbing, passive aggressive, political, but we can all be guilty of these behaviours. And I think reflecting on these stories can help you avoid repeating those behaviours in the future. I missed something in the chat then. Did you spot that, Imran? Or Tom?
Hey there, Imran.
Sorry, I was struggling. Go ahead, Tom.
There's a few in the chat. Do you want to go through them?
If they're relevant now, yeah, that'd be useful.
Yeah, there's basically, we have covered most of it, but Nawaz has asked, and this was for the previous section actually.
Okay.
What would be the reasons that can take an organization from level 7 downwards? Yeah, and that's the only remaining one.
That's the only one. I thought I'd spotted another chat just pop up then. Again, I'll come back to that one. Jack, I think sharing was this. Someone was just sharing his experience. Underperforming is a real challenge area for people to deal with. I think really trying to stay in that radical candor space. You can care personally. You can be very much supporting and wanting that person to succeed, but you have to be really clear on the expectations as well, because that's the kindest thing to do. Right. A quick look at a feedback model. This is one I've got from Manager Tools. So 4 steps to feedback. First, you always ask if the person's open to feedback. You then describe the behavior, you describe the impact, and then the reason you're giving feedback is to kind of focus on the future. So you want more effective future behavior. The past has gone. There's no point beating someone up for what's happened in the past. You're trying to influence what happens in the future. So it looks something like this. Can I give you some feedback? And then you describe the behavior. So when you arrive late to our meeting, we waste time bringing you up to speed. There's the impact. And then what can you do differently? This is putting them in that space of what does the future look like? What are they committing to? What are they kind of owning and signing up for in terms of future effective behavior? But equally, looks exactly the same if you want to offer someone praise. So can I give you some feedback? When you share what you learned at Agile Northhants with the team, it helps us all improve and encourages learning. So again, the behavior, the impact, and the future effective behavior this time is just say thanks. Thanks goes a long way. Really simple feedback steps that you can use, whether you want to change behavior that's not helpful, or whether you want to offer feedback to thank someone. Right, last one here is impact. So signs of needing to improve your impact. If people see the work as sort of treading water, doesn't matter what we build, there's always more to do. Doesn't matter what we fix, there's another bug waiting. We're just treading water. There's no impact here. Have you got too many goals? You're not making meaningful progress. You're trying to spin many plates, make progress in lots of areas. So things to ask yourself: do team members see their work as creating change for the better? Do they feel that their work matters for a higher order goal? So it's not about we did this ticket, we did these points, but why? What's the impact? Who's going to enjoy what we've done? Who are the users excited to use what we're building? And then think about burnout. So if the current processes are all about treading water and not creating impact, burnout's far more likely to happen. So things we can do: you can co-create a vision that reinforces how each team members work, contributes to the teams and the broader organisation goal. So again, any thoughts of what we might have to start with on this? How could we help demonstrate impact? Things I thought about: if you're using OKRs, they could be useful from a high level impact, maybe even your sprint goals. So hopefully everyone is creating a sprint goal and not just dumping 30 points of stuff into each sprint. They're actually thinking about the impact that they want to create each sprint. You can reflect on the work you're doing, how it impacts users or clients in the organization. And I think feedback we often get is around the things that aren't working. So we're often getting those customer support, those feedback from testing. It's the bugs, it's the stuff that's broken. But can you go find the feedback on things that we are doing well? What are your account managers saying? What's the customer success team? How are sales winning and selling to the users? That's where the positive feedback's going to be. So don't forget to kind of balance all those bugs and the negatives with some successes in there. And then if you're going to use you should use a user-centered evaluation method that focuses on the user. And what sort of user-centered information do you have? Where's that across the organization? Maybe you're collecting net promoter scores, survey results. Maybe your marketing team has got some information. Maybe your product team are collecting usage statistics. Maybe there's some analytics in your platform. Again, how do you focus the work on the user? Right. I think what we want to know is how do we improve our culture? So I think there's a few things. There's a number of models, a number of things that I've been through today. In, the Westerns organizational model, tribal leadership, energy leadership, all those bits in Project Aristotle. So the models help you think about culture in some different ways. A number of tools and techniques that we've shared, could they help? So would a racy matrix, would radical candor, feedback, would they help? And I think we can recognize that our culture comes from our leaders, but all changes start with individuals. And to borrow from Gandhi, I think, be the change you want to see in the world. You can change the culture, start with yourself, and that will spread around yourself, to your team, to your organization. We go right back to the start when we think about what we talk about and what we reward. Again, starting with yourself, be aware of what you talk about. It's interesting to see what other people are talking about. What do you talk about? What stories are you telling? Who's the hero? Who's the villain in that story? And then also think about what is it that you reward. So you might say, well, I'm not the person who decides the bonuses and salaries and promotions. It's not just about the money. Prestige, recognition, praise, working on the best projects, even just giving your attention is a form of reward. And there we go. Thank you. I will come back to that question on what was it about what causes an organization to drop from level 7 down, or something like that, around energy leadership, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I think energy leadership is, whilst I framed it as a culture, I think it is quite individual focused, and individuals interacting at certain levels, you can create energies together, and you can bring people down or up on energy levels. But I think at level 7 is a well, energy leadership as itself is an individual thing. So if someone's at level 7, they can move in and out it quite quickly. It is around those thoughts and emotions and actions. I think we describe level 7 as someone being in flow. So what's the interaction that's going to bring them out of flow? It probably is distractions, people asking questions, causing other levels of energy to bring them down. But you can very quickly go back up again. You're not stuck in one level or another. You can have a sort of average energy level. Good question, Jack. What were the books referenced? Energy leadership and tribal leadership. I probably should have put some better links in for those. The slides have got pictures of the covers on, but no links. Radical candor is also in there as well.
Any questions from anybody? Thank you, Graham. Thank you very much.